In his mind, we're the good guys. Everything we say, he interprets that way. If you say you don't care if he lives or dies, it must be your dry gallows humor. Seriously? Yep, that's a really stupid way to go through life. It's how most people do. Then most people are really stupid. And yet we made it to the stars, Peaches said. Amos stretched out his arms, the muscles across his shoulders hurting pleasantly. You know, Peaches, it's nice how we got all this help and stuff, but I kinda liked it better when it was only you and me. You say the sweetest things. I'm gonna track down some coffee or tea, or amphetamines. You need anything? Nope, I'm solid. He watched her walk away. She was still way too thin, but since he'd stepped into the room in the pit at Bethlehem, she'd taken on a kind of confidence. He wondered if she had to go back, whether she still wanted him to kill her. Probably something worth asking about. Hey guys, Pete here. Time to break down Season 5, Episode 9 of The Expanse. The end is near, and Winnipesaukee concludes one of the major storylines, while inching everything else right to the edge. It had a bit of everything, with a sad moment from the once-and-future queen, and some displays of that characteristic belter endurance and resilience from Naomi and Drummer. I mean, I know growing up a belter has prepared Drummer to function with a boot on her neck, but Cara really feels like she's pushing her luck at this point. Before we get into it, this is your spoiler warning. If you haven't watched Season 5, Episode 9 yet, then this video won't be for you. You need to go get caught up first and then come back and watch. I will be referring to the books as someone who's read them, but won't be revealing any future spoilers from those. With that out of the way, let's get started. At the end of Episode 8, Naomi was able to alter the Chetsmoka's fake distress call that was playing on a loop before she cut it off. It was a Hail Mary move, and probably just about the only thing she could have done under the circumstances. That episode came to an end with Cara and Oksana hearing the message, and in the beginning of Episode 9, we see the message getting out everywhere else. I liked how we saw the different reactions all together here. Marco has the most information about what's happening, and he figures out right away that Naomi isn't dead. Alex and Bobbie notice the message changed before it stopped transmitting, but aren't sure what to make of that. Holden and the Rossi are pretty much in the same boat, but I guess since Bull isn't crew, he seems to take every chance they give him to buck against helping out Naomi. I'm not sure if there's something else there, but it feels funny at this point. Either way, he dials it back. Both ships are now making their way towards the Chetsmoka, and we know that the Razorback is going to make it there first. Naomi's still there, trying to find a way to protect her family from falling into Marco's trap. She's still taking trips out into the vacuum between the halls, and she finds some ice there on the outside of some pipes. She's able to scrape some of that off onto her wrist display and get some much needed water. She half collapses to the floor, and she notices one of the wires to the explosive devices is nicked. At the end of the episode, we see that she's able to connect that to the display on the face shield of one of the helmets. She gets a quick burst of relief when she notices that the screaming Firehawk is getting closer to where she's at. Remember, the message she received from Alex in the last episode, he told her the Razorback was flying under that name. So she knows this is Alex and Bobbie, but she can also see the display that shows when the explosives will arm and when they will detonate. There is a problem. She has to warn them, and we see her go back out and hear a banging noise, considering that she scraped the ice off of some pipes, and we saw her look at her wrist display before she went out. I'm guessing that she's beating on those pipes. Having read the books, I have a pretty good idea of why she's doing that, but I'll just leave it there for now. On Luna, we check in with Avasarala, who's looking at a monument of names of people who died as a result of the asteroid attack. From a monitor nearby, she learns that Pastor moved forward with the plan to strike Palace Station. They kept her out of the loop on that, so she finds Delgado and gives him the business. In the cabinet room, the military and the Secretary General are discussing follow-up strikes. Avasarala tries to talk them out of further escalation. She's making the same case she was making originally, and it still makes a lot of sense, but you can see that as she's talking, she realizes that nobody's listening to her, and that's the reason why they cut her out of the decision in the first place. She asks if Marco is their role model now, and it all builds to an emotional speech where she breaks down about losing her husband, talks about how she wants revenge, of course she does, but then points out that everyone who lost someone on Palace feels the exact same way. The Secretary General, who's obviously getting into this, getting riled up to flex the UN's military might, tries to tell her that they can't let emotions decide. It's pretty wild. They move on to plans about attacking Ceres Station, where millions of people live, including a lot of kids and families. They mention that Anderson Dawes is an ally, and they just sort of brush that aside, saying that they don't trust them anyways. And at that point, Avasarala has had all she can take, and she resigns, with a handful of other cabinet members following her lead. Later, we see that now that she said it out loud, she's accepted that Arjun is dead. She adds his name to the memorial in a scene that really hit me harder than I was expecting. The dedication reads, "If life transcends death, then I will search for you there." And this is from a poem that Arjun wrote for her that was a really great moment in the second book. And the rest of it says, "If not, then there too." This is also a nice Easter egg for something that'll happen later in the books, which I can't say, but book readers know what I'm talking about. While she's there, she's approached by one of the cabinet members who tells her that other cabinet members are walking away from Pastor and he's going to get a vote of no confidence. They're approaching her to be his replacement, and after accepting, she goes to see Delgado in his office to ask him if he'll join her cabinet. And after he declines, saying that he wants to join a strike force and go after Marco, hopefully he'll be the guy who kills Marco, we get the end of the joke, which turns out not to be very funny, but fitting for the situation. The punchline is the Earther asks for the best Belter liquor they have, and when the bartender asks, "Because you're trying to drink like your enemy?" he says, "No, because I'm trying to drink less, and the best the Belt has to offer is terrible." Basically, Earther's looking at Belters as next to nothing, and certainly not enough to be their enemies. Delgado adds at the end that it used to be funnier, and while he probably believed that, you see it hit in him that, it kind of really wasn't. The big thing here is Avasarala is now in charge, which should be to the UN's advantage. And rip Arjun. It is a sad situation, especially when you think about how things ended with them. Avasarala never had a chance to reconcile after what happened in the last season. We catch up with Drummer's faction. All three of her ships are docked together. We find Carl and Oksana looking for privacy on the DeWalt. They take a look at the Chetzemoka and see that it hasn't changed course, so they know that even if Naomi is alive, that she doesn't have control of the ship. Based on what Drummer's told her about Naomi, Oksana thinks this may not last, and that Drummer will definitely want to investigate when she finds out, so Caral tells her she can't say anything. She makes a not-so-subtle threat here that Drummer isn't the only person that Oksana loves in their crew, and that they all pledge their lives, the whole crew, the whole faction, to Marco and Inaros, and there will be consequences for all of them. She says he knows about the situation and he'll give them orders. A little bit later, we find out what he wants them to do. He wants the Drummer faction to go meet up with the Serial Mall and the Koto, and he wants them to hunt down and destroy the Rocinante. This doesn't make any sense to Drummer because the story is that the Rocinante is going into a trap and it's going to be destroyed anyways. The question is, why take the risk? Caral says that they want to show the Free Navy taking out a symbol of assimilation and compromise. And while this doesn't really convince Drummer, another not-so-subtle threat gets Drummer to agree to go along if that's what needs to be done. Of course, Marco and Caral know Naomi is alive, and that's why they don't want to leave things to chance. Oksana also knows, and she goes to Drummer and gets her to hand over her gun because she fears that she might just lose it and kill Caral, and that would put Serge's life in danger. Later, these two come together, and Drummer knows Oksana is keeping something from her. It's a pretty powerful exchange where Drummer tells it like she sees it. Everything she's done to this point with the Free Navy has been about her family, and now she thinks that Oksana doesn't respect her enough to tell her the truth. Oksana asks her if she loves the family as much as she loves Naomi. Drummer's hurt by this, but Oksana says she needs to hear her say it, which she does. Then she tells her that Naomi might still be alive, but that she can't go save her, because they know what happened to the factions that went against them. For now, they're stuck, and it looks like they're gonna have to try to hunt down the Rocinante. As Oksana said, it's 5 ships against 1, so they shouldn't really have a problem there, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. On top of ordering them to do that, Marco does go and talk to Filip and explain to him that Naomi survived. He uses this to make his son feel abandoned again. He completely manipulates him with the situation. He tells him that she didn't walk out of the ship in desperation, she did it to escape. She left us, she left both of us again. And when he hears that, Filip flips out. And you have to feel for him a bit in this situation. Because the show didn't really show her planning this, it didn't lean into the idea that she had to make the decision knowing that this may happen to Filip. Essentially, she had to choose her new family, the family that she chose, the crew of the Rocinante, over her own child. Of course, Marco put her in that situation, and then seeing him use that against Filip really underlines what kind of character he is. For the final part of the story, we see Amos, Clarissa, Erich, and their crew arrive at Winnipesaukee. It looks pretty deserted there. They fly in. It looks like they brought about a dozen of Erich's henchmen with them, and they're heavily armed. They find the hangar and the launch pad, and Clarissa says that she can fly the shuttle. They discover the Winter staff hiding there. They remember Clarissa and her family, and they tell them that the shuttle hasn't flown for a couple of years, and they think there's a problem with the reactor. Some staff from the other houses show up because they saw the helicopter. They've basically been abandoned. Erich and Amos instantly tell them to get lost. They're not there to help them. But Clarissa says that they can come along if they want to. Erich objects and this causes a rift. Amos can see where he's coming from, but decides to side with Clarissa, perhaps thinking that this is the kind of thing Holden would do. While they continue to work on the shuttle, they're interrupted by a private security team who comes to the property and wants to take their food and supplies to a central location. Erich and Amos see this for what it is. It's a shakedown, and they're not even doing a good job of it, and tensions escalate until guns are drawn. Once again, Clarissa jumps in and tries to de-escalate, but this is a very different situation. And while Amos sides with her again, just telling them to walk away, he does so knowing that these people are going to come back. Everybody knows they're going to come back. So they're hoping they can fix the shuttle and be gone by the time that happens. It's an interesting contrast where you have these two characters. I just did the big Amos and Clarissa video the other day where I talked about how they complement each other. And part of why they work so well together is that they're both bringing different things to the table in this journey to try to be something better. Here we get an example where this transformation is an ongoing process. And there's going to be some mistakes made because decisions like these don't fall neatly into moral categories. A little bit later in the shuttle's cockpit, Peaches and Erich talk, and I really enjoyed this. They have a little back and forth. He asks why Timmy calls her Peaches, and she admits that she doesn't know why. She asks why he calls him Timmy, because that's his name, but she doesn't know that. And she says, should I ask? And he says, I wouldn't. She starts talking about tribes and veers into kumbaya territory, talking about maybe if we let everyone in our tribe, no one would have thrown rocks at us in the first place. Erich kind of rolls his eyes to this and says, Jesus, where did Timmy find you? And she says, serving a life sentence for multiple homicides. Amos goes outside to think a bit because he can't figure out what's going on with the ship. He has a conversation there with one of the henchmen. Hutch says, I guess the last time you left you were happy to go. And Amos says no, not at first. And when asked what changed, he said he found his place. Hutch says that they spent their whole life learning how to survive in Baltimore, and there's apprehension there about leaving it behind, even though it's not much. Amos makes the point that no one really starts over because no one really leaves anything behind. And this further reinforces his revelation that he had in episode 6, where he realized that he needed to get back to his crew. He had to come back to Earth to find out what happened to Lydia. He's done that, and now he can leave knowing that there's nothing left for him there, that his real home is on the Rocinante. They're able to fix the shuttle, but the security guards come back. A shootout happens, and I enjoyed this. Even though I knew the outcome, I still found it exciting to watch. Several of Erich's guys get taken out. While Clarissa's getting all the staff on board, she hears some of the security guards coming in the other entrance. She's able to use her mods to kill all of them, and that makes a pretty big impression with Erich. He says he's going to be a lot nicer to her from now on. He's seen the kumbaya side, now he's seen the other. Amos gets wounded, Hutch saves him. Then when they're getting on the ship, the tables are turned, and Amos saves Hutch. They make it on board, Amos tells them to go, and while the hangar doors are still opening up, Erich decides to light up the Epstein drive, and that slags the entire area, including the house, and all the security guards go up in smoke. This was fun to see because it's something they considered doing with their drives at various points in the book, and now I understand what that would actually look like. It looks like Hutch survived, and it looks like they'll be able to make it to Luna. They'll have some stuff to figure out when they get there, I suppose, and we'll see how that goes next week. This was pretty much what I expected, so I was pretty happy with the episode. It finishes off Amos's journey to Earth, Avasarala is back in charge, and the Razorback and Rocinante are both heading towards Naomi. So that's pretty much everything that had to happen. The drummer stuff is pretty intense, and it's hard to see how she can get out of that situation without killing Kamal. It seemed pretty unlikely considering there's no doubt that Marco will space Surge in retaliation, but I'm having trouble thinking of a different outcome. She could leave the family, but then she'll probably be hunted down herself, so I don't know. Let me know if you see a future where Drummer learns to play nice with the Free Navy, because they aren't making it easy. The Avasarala scenes were interesting, and her saying goodbye to Arjun had some weight to it. I really enjoyed seeing Amos torn between his old ways of thinking and the new, and how having Erich and Clarissa there served to pull him in different directions where there were no easy decisions. That seems like a pretty good place to leave things. I'll talk about where things might be going in my preview video, which will come out in a few days. Let me know in the comments what you're thinking, what you thought of this episode, what you think's going to happen in the finale. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.